We also have Lynn Hanley, and she is the Managing Director of Communitas. And Communitas is the project manager for the retrofit. We also have Peter. He is a partner of Butterwick Projects and a director on the board for Retrofit Canada. And just a bit of housekeeping, attendees today do not have any audio or video. Please feel free to make comments. I'll be running a slideshow, so I won't be able to respond. But if you have questions, or you can respond to others' comments in the presentation. But if you have questions, if you navigate through your screen, I think it depends on what type of platform you're on, but there's a button for Q&A, and that's where you submit your questions. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A, and you can submit a question, and then you can also vote for your favorite questions, and we'll try to get through all of them, depending on how many there are. We may not, so your votes will help us screen them. So thanks everybody again for starting, and I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, is Jean.
All right, thank you, Tim, and thank you for hosting this webinar on behalf of Sundance Housing Cooperative. Our journey to net zero, the deep energy retrofit, we're very much in the thick of it now. But in reflection, I think that it actually began with the founding members of Sundance in 1978. There was a forward-thinking energy that characterized those volunteers that put Sundance together. They had an environmental sensibility and community engagement thread in the mix. So the roots of this project that we're going to share information with you about this morning really have their beginnings in our beginnings. Sundance Housing Cooperative began to formalize how we wanted to proceed long-term with our buildings in 2016. And to that end, we moved into primary partnership with Butterwick Projects. As Tim has said, Peter Amarongan, who's with us today, is part of that configuration. Butterwick Projects is our construction team. They've been with us from the get-go, and construction began in March 2019. Our other major primary partner is the Communitas Group. And as Managing Director, Lynn Hanley, who you'll also hear from a little later on, has been with us from the get-go. But the entire team at Communitas is part of our partnership relationship. And just a word about Communitas, their focus is, it's a private firm doing community development, but they've actually had experience with over 60 different housing projects, most of them housing co-ops. So both Butterwick Projects and the Communitas Group are our primary partners. And we'll just move on to talk a little bit about our funding partners. So again, early on in the process of, can we move forward with the deep energy retrofit in this cooperative now? We engaged Natural Resources Canada, NRCan, to test out the deep energy approach to retrofitting our buildings. And that turned out to be a successful engagement. They were willing to partner with us. And in May of 2019, the public announcement of their support for our deep energy retrofit was made by the then Minister of Natural Resources at the time, Federal Minister, Amarjeet Sohi. And I want to just read a very short statement of what he said when he joined us at Sundance to make this public announcement of financial support. The transition to a clean energy economy requires collective action to make Canada's buildings more energy efficient. This project, that's our deep energy retrofit, is an example of how the Government of Canada is collaborating closely with partners to develop innovative solutions that will benefit all Canadians, putting more money in their pockets while reducing pollution. Amarjeet Sohi. So our funding support from NRCan from early on, and then our major financial institution is Service Credit Union. They also have been a long time supporter of our projects, providing mortgage financing for us when we built a seniors project in the early 2000s. So we engaged them with our deep energy retrofit to refinance our higher interest rate CMHC mortgage. And for those of you who are hearing this morning and are members of housing cooperatives, you'll know exactly what I mean about those high interest rate CMHC mortgages. So we refinance that and continue to have a steady financial relationship with Service. So that covers our funding and financing major partnerships. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Jean. Sundance is it's a continuing co-op. It's been around since we actually incorporated in 1974 and started providing affordable housing to members in 1978. We took occupancy in the late fall of 78 and continued into 79 as it was sort of split over that part of the year. It consists of 78 homes, 59 townhomes, which is Sundance Main, which is the part that's being retrofit, 10 duplex units in the surrounding community, and a 9-suite 55 plus seniors apartment that we built in 2009, as Jean alluded to with the funding. We're a mixed community serving households of all ages and all incomes. And this helps us to provide internal subsidies for members who have lower incomes, because members who have higher incomes pay a surcharge, and it goes into a subsidy pool that then is used to help augment housing charges for those with lower incomes. So it's worked very well for us over the past 40 some years and has gotten us to this stage. We have always been interested in protecting the environment. We have always had a really good grasp of where we sit. We want to reduce our carbon footprint and increase our energy efficiency. It's been a long-standing value of ours. When we were built in 1978, we actually used a much higher R value insulation than was required by code at the time. And that has stood us in very good stead because our buildings have actually been in pretty good condition all these years. Other energy savings, we built a recycling shed for donated recycled items. And also we recycle bottles on a regular basis and use the income from that to buy low flush toilets. We bought low flush toilets for the entire co-op one year. We have bought several rainwater barrels that people love to use for the gardens. And yeah, so that's sort of what we've been spending that money on.
So I see that there actually was even a question in the chat about why did Sundance decide to do this? Well, Sundance, as Beth and Jean indicated, have always had a concern about doing energy efficient community. And actually in 2016, CMHC had a retrofit project, and Sundance actually made an application under that project, and they made an application not just to do an ordinary retrofit, but to do something that was beyond that. Unfortunately, because Sundance was in such good shape, it never got any funding under that program. But that didn't stop the members. People were concerned about future-proofing the co-op. And there actually was, I mean, if you're in a co-op, you know, there's various different committees, and Sundance is self-managed, so the committees are very active. And so there was discussion between the maintenance and the finance committee in terms of how do we look at future-proofing the co-op? You know, we've been here for this long, and how do we move forward? And so in 2017, the membership, and this is when, if you understand co-ops, in this particular instance, the membership decided to undertake a feasibility analysis to decide what would be the best approach in terms of future-proofing the physical component of the building. And so they actually hired an engineering firm, Renew Engineering, who's good at understanding what the options are. And Renew actually identified 3 options for the co-op to look at. 1, just refurbish and repair what you've got in terms of the existing envelope. And unfortunately, and Peter's going to talk about that later, a lot of people are looking at this as a way of dealing with the future. The other was to refit the buildings to bring them up to the current building code. Because you have to remember, Sundance, the initial construction was started in 74. So the building code was quite different then. And even though the co-op put in extra insulation, there are a number of other factors that have changed. And the other was to take a look at a deep energy retrofit. And so the co-op actually decided to do a deep energy retrofit. So we can have the next slide. So this is interesting because as they were looking at the different options, the co-op went through a whole process of identifying a values matrix that could then be used to assess the various options. So it wasn't just somebody's opinion versus somebody else's opinion. They actually, I mean, there was actually a couple of workshops, intensive workshops, where people identified what would be the values as they move to the future in terms of doing the sort of future proofing. And these values, as you can see, were the ones that they identified collectively as a group. So it was accessibility, affordability, maintaining the cooperative spirit, engagement, ensuring health and well-being of the members, the whole idea of inclusiveness, maintaining pride of ownership, because as co-ops, it's a collective ownership, but it is an ownership situation, looking at environmental sustainability, long-term viability, and were the values that were identified. So when we go back to the options that we talked about, the 3 options, we're not going back, I'm just saying it. You don't need to. So the first option was just maintain the existing. The other was bring it up to code. And the other was to do a deep energy retrofit. What happened was the planning committee that Jean is going to talk about later actually did an assessment of the various options based upon the values matrix that the membership developed, and identified how each of these options ranked in terms of the various values. And you can see option 3B, which was one of the deep energy retrofits, basically came up as the top option. So that was the course that the co-op decided to pursue. So now, can we move to the next one?
Okay, so over to me. Yeah.
Well, they decided to do a deep energy retrofit,
Okay.
and they set a steering committee. They contracted us, Communitas, and they contracted Butterick. So we'll do the next one, and then I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who's going to talk about. Okay, Peter, it's all yours.
Thank you. So, as you've heard from Lynn, Sundance wanted to do it once and do it right. They wanted to make their homes emissions neutral for the foreseeable future, and that meant avoiding the kind of piecemeal partial upgrades that are typically recommended by contractors and consultants, where they sort of pick the low-hanging fruit and make it actually, in many cases, more difficult to ever get the buildings to anything like an emissions neutral standard. So, if you're a co-op and you're thinking about this, it's really worth it to aim for where you really want to go rather than just little partial upgrades. So we're using a Dutch system. We're inspired by the energy sprong system that was developed in the Netherlands a few years ago, where they take post-war townhouses, which they've got hundreds of thousands of millions, that have almost no insulation, and they're community housing. Really, they're row houses, and it's a really prominent form of housing in the Netherlands. Anyway, they've developed a system to turn these houses into essentially net zero buildings. They call it net zero on the meter. They've done about 5,000 so far. They've got about 10 in the works, 10,000 in the works, and they're about I think their initial pilot project is like 100,000 units. And like Sundance, next slide, please. Like Energy Sprong, we are starting with a digital capture of the existing buildings. So we do a laser scan of all 59 buildings. We take we take a point cloud file for each building and extract the geometry and locate the windows and doors and the critical points like the corners and junctions, and turn those into panel drawings that we have manufactured offsite and then delivered to the site when we need them. Next slide, please. And while the panels are being built, we're getting the buildings ready. We insulate the foundations using a hydrovac to make a slot that we can drop insulation to. We install a panel support box that is anchored to the building to support the weight of the new panels and be the sort of grade level of the house. We cut off the overhangs of the existing building and get the windows loosened so that on panel raising day, next slide, please. We can very quickly install the new panels. After they're installed, they get sealed together with a water resistive airtight membrane that's integral to the panels to create an airtight and highly durable envelope. We've got rain screen technology that means that any moisture that does get through the cladding can drain harmlessly to the bottom. So it's essentially a airtight, highly insulated, very, very durable exterior that should look after maintenance costs for many years in the future. So we're wrapping the building in a nice warm parka, essentially. And we top it off by putting a scissor truss roof over it. We seal the old leaky attics and make a cavity that lets us add about another R50 of cellulose insulation. And at the next slide, please. So once the buildings have the insulation that we've added has reduced the energy needs of the building by about 70%. And it's now practical to abandon the gas lines and electrify the buildings. So we're installing air source heat pump heating systems that will provide very economical cooling, air source heat pump water heaters. And because the buildings are now airtight, we're putting in heat recovery ventilators that save more energy and give co-op members a continuous supply of healthy fresh air. So Sundance has been an amazing partner through all this. You know, as we've worked through the challenges and problems of developing new systems and new techniques, first time in North America. These are early days. The buildings that we're working on are more complex than what they're doing in the Netherlands, but and we've had lots of challenges with COVID and labor shortages, so we're not going quite as quickly as we would like, but we're getting there, and these buildings will be pretty much net zero with the solar panels added, and the co-op has entered an agreement to purchase renewable energy for the balance. So yeah, so back to you then.
Just go back for a minute.
Yeah, let me. I wanted to make a comment about that slide.
Yeah, because you took the picture, Peter.
I know. And so, you know, besides all the nerdy energy stuff, you know, right all the way through, job number one is to be, you know, to make these places a great place to live. And so besides the you know, bright new exterior that's low maintenance, we've also introduced a few things like skylights over the kitchen windows, and people have nice deep windowsills. Like we're completely thrilled with the way it's looking, and I think it's, you know, the feedback we're getting from members in the units that have been completed is that they really are way better to live in.
Great. Okay, I'm going to talk about for a minute why is Sundance doing this, but before I do that, I just want to add on to what Peter was talking about, because this whole project is completely occupied. There's people, there's kids, there's cats, there's dogs, and the work is being done while people are living in their unit. And that was quite interesting because it started out being sort of interesting, but then we introduced COVID. COVID got introduced, and then that had to change the process in terms of how the workers and how members interacted with each other. So this is like a trial by fire in terms of looking at how one might do this. So just to reiterate that. So the question is, why is the co-op doing this? And this relates to the question that came earlier, is how did you decide in terms of your membership to do it? And it wasn't an easy decision, and it took a long process. But in terms of why the co-op decided to do this, people are really concerned that in terms of a livable future, we really do have to address climate change. And the members of Sundance Co-op, and they're not all the same. They don't come from all the same political perception or whatever. They come from quite different perceptions, and it's quite different. It's quite an interesting dialogue at the membership meetings, but people are concerned about the future in terms of doing something in terms of climate action. And they recognize that, you know, 40% of the global emissions go to powering homes, offices, and other spaces. 28% of that is generally from existing operations and 12% from new construction. So people are aware of that. And we did an incredible amount of education in terms of the membership as they were making the decision to proceed or not to proceed. Like, not only was Peter there, we brought in other folks who had information in terms of what's happening and what we should be doing. And so the other thing that people recognize is, you know what? The bulk of the buildings that are going to be here in 2050 are already built. So what we have to do is we really have to focus in on how we can do something in terms of the existing. Yes, and Garfield Hunter says, co-op principle number 7, cooperate, the concern for community. That is very true. And that's part of it, yeah. So in terms of what the impact is, there is going to be a significant impact. The pre-retrofit in terms of the annual emissions was about 328 tons. The post-retrofit is about 76 tons. And then with the solar and green energy that they're purchasing, really effectively, it's going to be net zero. And I don't know whether you got that from Peter, but in Alberta, most homes are, and in terms of heat and hot water, is through natural gas. But the co-op decided to completely electrify the buildings by going to air source heat pumps and air source hot water, so that there is no more natural gas in terms of the building, no carbon fuels. And yes, electricity currently in Alberta was, a lot of it was coal-based, but it's switching. And so what the co-op decided to do is to work with a power provider that would, provide what was referred to as green energy to work towards net zero. Next.
Okay, so the focus of this slide and our attention for just a few moments, the Sundance Planning and Development Committee, is another piece of the picture that we are sketching out for you today about what our experience is with doing this deep energy retrofit. So we call this committee SPDC, Sundance Planning and Development Committee. And we're the interface between the membership and the boots on the ground. And so think of us as a small, it's just very small committee, the steering committee, to hold the decisions that the cooperative has made, because again, we're working with the cooperative housing model. So all decisions are made by the membership. So SPDC, taking those decisions that membership has come to, interfaces with the project management communitas and with the boots on the ground, the construction, Buttrick projects. So as you can imagine, it can be complicated. Any one of you who lives in a housing cooperative is going to know what I'm talking about here. So everybody gets to say something about anything, because that's how we make decisions. So we have lots of points of view to incorporate. And then we also have a few folks with quite a bit of attitude. So there's that to manage and deal with as well. So we meet SPDC on a weekly basis to do the best to keep this interface clear and communication channels open. The retrofit's a pretty multi-layered project, and really it's been a learning curve for all of us. But we remind ourselves that we're on the leading edge of how buildings can be retrofit, and keep moving forward with it. When things get a little tight, as they do occasionally, we have a model. We've adopted a model keep calm and carry on. And that served us well. Just to touch on our scope, government relations, our relationship with Natural Resources Canada that I referred to earlier, and with the city of Edmonton, the buildings that we're retrofitting are built on leased city land. So we had to extend that lease in order to set up the long-term financing that we needed. And of course, the Financing Service Credit Union, our longtime financial partner, covering the mortgage financing. We're exploring other long-term financing, some of which we can't speak about yet, but we can come back to that. And the member engagement. So member engagement, which we'll open up in the next slide, is about getting information to the members about what's going on. So the new technologies, as well as the process of moving forward with the retrofit. And then we meet twice a month with Buttrick Projects on Zoom to make sure that we're in alignment with their considerations and concerns. And there's sometimes a bit of problem solving that goes on there as well. And the stakeholder relations would be what we're doing today, sharing with other co-ops how this is possible for your co-op. If we can do it, you can do it too. Just a word. Oh, did you want to talk about member engagement here, Beth?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Jean. So as Jean has iterated, Sundance members make all the key decisions and direct the future of the organization. Since 2017, we have hosted 18 workshops or general membership meetings about DER, and they have made decisions on everything from deciding the color palette for the buildings, to what green energy provider we were going to go with, to extending the land lease. I mean, all of these things have been involved in the workshops and general membership meetings that we have held. We record those meetings so that members who can't attend can have access to all of the recordings and the decisions that are made. And we produce something called the Retrofit Report. And since the beginning, we have produced, actually as of today, we have produced 21 retrofit reports, because we just delivered Retrofit Report 21 to the membership this morning. And that also keeps them advised of everything that's going on, any sort of things that they need to know that are sort of fall between the cracks. In fact, the newest one that we just put out has how to deal with all of your new mechanical systems, with very nice pictures and lots of explanation of how things work and how to change filters and things like that. So it's our way of contacting the membership and keeping them up to date on an almost weekly basis, so that they know what's going on and can respond to us if they need to. And the next slide had shown you that the retrofit reports and selecting the color palette. This was fun. I will tell you right now, it took us several months to get down to these two options of color palettes. Drove us nuts trying to figure it out, but we finally did. And the members were given the right to vote on two options of colors. And as you can see, we use a dot matrix sort of voting plan, and option 2, which was the 5 color variation, got the most votes. So that is indeed what we went with. And then we had a engineer or architect, a design architect, plot out which colors would go on which buildings. And because some of our buildings have 6 or 7 units in them, those blocks are divided up into 2 different colors. So yeah, it was a very interesting thing to have to deal with, and the members are quite pleased with the outcome. And amongst the other key decisions, we obviously had to refinance the high interest mortgage rate with CMHC, and that program came out a few years back where they offered co-ops the right to refinance. They offered it on the premise that you would either provide new housing, build new housing, provide more subsidies, or in our case, retrofit existing units, and we chose the retrofit option. To extend the land lease with the city for 60 years. They are very gung-ho on this. They were very pleased to work with us on this, and they made it just such a smooth transition to do this. So we literally, our lease is now up in, I think, 2098. So that was so that we can secure long-term financing and possibly go for a 30 or 40-year mortgage. That gives us that security. We had secured construction financing from service until we can find out the final costs, and then go for the long-term financing. Service is providing us with the construction financing. We accepted the Enercan contribution offer, which was basically they are giving us, I'm trying to remember now. Lynn, can you help me out here? I can't remember the things.
0.3.
I'm going to talk about Enercan later.
Okay, thank you. And we had to vote on the upgrading the electrical. We upgraded the entire electrical system because our system was, well, 40 some years old. And with all of the new toys that everybody has that require a lot more energy than most of our panels are able to provide, we had to completely upgrade the electrical to every unit. So every unit now has a brand new panel with upgraded electricity, and that was then allows us to convert to the electric heat pumps and the hot water tanks. And also we voted on adding solar panels and voted to pick a green energy provider. So all of this are major decisions that the members have had to make. And they have done a very good job under the circumstances. It's been a lot for them to digest and consider. And we've had lots of chats about it. And so far, the vast majority of the members are very happy with what's been going on and what's happening. And the ones especially who have the retrofitted units are extremely happy with the outcome.
Talk about costs, and there was a question I saw in the chat in terms of the increase in housing charges. We don't call it rent, we call it housing charges. When the co-op decided to pursue the deep energy retrofit, we sort of set an envelope in terms of trying to keep the monthly housing charges and utility costs within a particular framework. So it's within that framework that the whole financing and financial modeling has been done. So there won't be, we don't want to have people having significant cost increases as a result of it. But there are cost trade-offs. Like basically, you take some of the cost savings from reduced energy costs that you would pay to the utility company and transfer that to cover some of the costs of the retrofit work. So it's a complicated but easy to deal with process. So in terms of the total costs is 11.5 million. This includes paying out the balance of the existing mortgage that the CMHC long-term mortgage, because this is one of the early co-ops that were built in the 70s in terms of the CMHC program. So they did refinance their mortgage. They got a contribution from Enercan, just over 2.7 million. Sundance itself invested 194,000. I mean, if need be, they could contribute more, because what happened was when they refinanced their existing CMHC mortgage, they continued to charge the members for the full amount and took the difference between what the cost of the new mortgage was because of the lower interest rate and what the members were paying, and put it into a retrofit fund. So that was being used for that. The city of Edmonton does a solar grant, and they're gonna look at a 40-year mortgage, be a CMHC insured mortgage, and then they've actually made an application in terms of the Green Municipal Fund, which is in process. So that's how this is being financed. And the idea, as I said, underlying the financing was that members would not see a significant increase in housing charges. So one of the things that Sundance is committed to is basically sharing the learnings. I mean, I don't think anybody, Peter, you or myself or anybody, or the Sundance Planning and Development Committee really understood what this journey would be in terms of what needed to happen and how it needed to be put together from a physical perspective, from a membership perspective, and from a financial perspective. So we've learned a lot, and there's a lot more to learn. And it was a very steep learning curve, and it continues to go up. But the co-op is committed to sharing its learnings. And one of the things is doing a webinar like this. This is the first of a series of webinars. So this is the overarching webinar. We're going to do specific webinars on the technical aspects in terms of, what happens, and also on the financial aspects. So as I say, this is the first one. Sundance is working with Retrofit Canada, which actually has a website that people can access, and it's getting built. I mean, like everything takes time. So there's more information there. Okay, so Sundance really truly believes that co-ops can lead the way. And why does Sundance believe that? Because co-ops are a collective form of ownership, and people are committed to doing something in terms of their community and their world, which is a little bit different than, say, your other forms of ownership in terms of condos, whereas it's a mixture of owner, occupiers, and investors. In terms of the private rental sector, there's pros and cons there, but co-ops have a commitment to their particular environment, and they can actually lead the way. And there's lots of co-ops across the country who can do things. And and people are used to working together. I mean, sometimes it's not as good as it could be, but it is there. And the other thing is there are now financing opportunities that are specific to co-ops and nonprofits, both through the CMHC programs and through the FCM Green Municipal Fund. That's it.
Well, thank you to Lynn, Jean, Beth, and Peter for the presentation. We're now at the Q&A, and we have 5 questions in the Q&A, and I have been trying to keep track of this while I did a middling job of advancing the slides at the right time. So thanks to the presenters for bearing with me. I had a couple of mishaps. I actually think that we could, if I go through the list of Q&As, I'm just going to unmute the person that asked the question, and you're going to be allowed to just say your question to the presenters here. So I'm going to start with Garfield. He was first out of the gates. So Garfield, let me give you a chance to, it looks like you had a couple of questions. They may have been answered during the presentation, but I'll let you go first. So I'm going to allow you to talk. Are you there, Garfield?
Oh, sorry. Good morning. I think my question was answered. My question was, why did Sundance undertake a deep retrofit, what was the immediate driving factors that triggered the need for the project? And how did the co-op mobilize themselves and convince members? Because this can be one of the most challenging aspects in terms of undertaking a very expensive and disruptive project as well. And tenets of that were mentioned in the presentation, where persons mentioned in terms of how the co-op decided, and also it disrupt people's life as well. It's quite innovative, and in terms of the benefits that will derive from undertaking the project itself. So I think my question was thoroughly answered by the team as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Garfield. The next one came from a anonymous attendee, and I'm not able to actually give them the opportunity to speak because they're anonymous. But the question was, and I think this is it's probably both for Peter as well as for Jean or Beth to talk about what it's like to live in one of these retrofitted units. Question is, does this envelope improve soundproofing as well as in reducing outdoor noise filtering inside?
I can take that one. Yes, it does. My unit has been completely retrofitted. In fact, it was that final picture of the retrofitted unit that we showed. And the soundproofing is amazing, actually. It cut down, like I barely hear the construction going on around me, even though it's been right across the sidewalk from me on the units facing me, because it's that good. So, yes.
Yeah, we, from the earliest days of building our 2000 houses, we used to get, we were expecting to be patted on the back because they were saving so much energy. But the comment we got most often was, I think there's something wrong with my fridge. It sounds like a truck. And really what it was that the combination of the triple glazing, the extra insulation, and especially the air tightness, just filtered out any outside noise. The real test of that, the hydrovacing of the foundation is very noisy, and the folks whose units have been done hardly notice it, and it drives everybody else crazy.
Thank you, Peter and Beth. Our next question comes from, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Femi or Femi. I apologize if both of those were wrong. Femi, you're unmuted, I see, so I think you're ready to speak.
That's okay. As long as you pronounce the alphabet, you're fine.
Okay.
Okay. I think Lynn spent time answering my question also. I was more interested in the financial side of things, that looking at all this financial mix you guys had to put together, pay out a mortgage, run a project. Was that impacted on the housing charges? And Lynn said no, because it could impact the current housing charge, even though in the future, the net zero part of it, is going to take away the pain eventually. But I'm glad to know that you guys were able to do this, to get this done. So Tim, the next question probably is for you. How popular is this retrofit program going to be? And since Sundance is the first one out of the gate, are any other co-ops going to be this lucky for support?
Did you just say Tim?
Yeah.
Oh, so my expertise is pushing the buttons and sending the links to the webinar, and I've been doing an okay job. Okay, so I actually think that I'm gonna chuck this one to Lynn first, and then I think Peter can also speak to the retrofit movement in Canada.
Okay.
Well, what's interesting? 2030 is really close.
Yeah.
And we collectively have to do something. So I guess it's a question of people having an understanding in terms of the overall environment that we're living in to act as a motivating factor. I mean, Sundance did it because that was part of their culture. I think really it's important to spread the concept that there is good news, that you can do something, and that there are now resources to do something, because otherwise people feel helpless and hopeless. And it is complicated. I'm not going to deny that. It's complicated, and that's why it's important to get a good team together. And hopefully that's one of the things that part of this work that Sundance can do in terms of sharing the learnings is to help people put a good team together. Because one of the things that I'm finding, unfortunately, is that there are folks going around telling people that what they should do is just maintain their existing assets and not looking at the future. And so I think it's really important, for people to really look at the future. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I have hope.
Yeah, you did.
Peter, I'm turning it to you.
Yeah, so it is complicated and difficult, but if we don't, the only way to sort of tunnel through these problems and tunnel through the cost barrier, as Amory Lovin says, is to actually roll up our sleeves and get going and do them. You can sit around in an office until you're blue in the face, and it's just, you're not going to solve these problems until you run into them and wrestle them to the ground. And that's really one of the wonderful things about this project. And we're so grateful to Sundance for the privilege of basically being able to work with them to actually solve them on the ground. And we are getting faster. We are solving the problems, and we've got a ways to go, but we're really starting from square one. And I think that as we do a few more of these and start to build the capacity, it'll get easier.
Thank you, Peter. Just looking at our questions here. Close that one. Soundproofing. Femi, was your question that you typed in just, I think, while Lynn was chatting there, will these resources be available for others? Would you mind just clarifying what you mean by resources? And then I'll let the presenters decide who should respond.
Well, that's just the cooperation you got from all the agencies interested in retrofitting. You got grants from here and there. You got support from the city. Like, will there still be appetite for that if 300 people ask for the same thing?
Yeah, I think there's the only grant they've got so far wasn't a grant, it's a contribution from NRCan, and that was to test the system because NRCan was interested in the technology.
Okay.
They've made an application to the Green Municipal Fund, which actually has financing for retrofits for co-ops and nonprofits. They have a special stream for that.
And let me tell you why I'm asking that.
Okay.
Let's look at electric cars, for example. For a lot of years, some provinces had rebates to get people into the electric market. But now that is becoming popular, you've seen premiers yank it off and say, well, there's no need to support it anymore. People are going to come this way anyways.
I don't think that's true with housing. I mean, electric cars a little bit different because people buy cars, and so, and then you can say, well, your trade-off is you're not paying for gasoline and you're going to buy your electric car, but housing is a big commodity, and we are, and ensuring the maintenance of ongoing affordable housing stock is front and foremost, I think, on most governments and others' agenda in the country today because of the lack of resources for that. And then you combine that with the recognition that buildings contribute significantly to the greenhouse gas emissions, and we have to do something about that. So I think that's a little bit different than the purchase of electric cars.
And I'd say too that we're a way earlier stage in the sort of innovation curve with developing deep retrofits for housing. We've just barely started where massive global corporations have been investing in the development of electric vehicles for some time now, and we've got a long ways to go. And I think that for anybody who's interested in doing this, we're still in that part of the curve where support is available.
Thank you, Peter and Lynn. We have somebody with their hand raised. Caitlin McNabb with a mystery question. I do not know what it is. Caitlin, you're unmuted, so you can ask your question now.
Hi there. I wanted to thank you for the presentation. This is really informative. I was curious to what was the most contentious or elements of the deep retrofit for the members of the community. Like, what were they surprising to you guys, or were they what you had originally expected would be contentious? I know you had talked about the colors, so yeah, I guess I was just interested in what kind of came up in this process.
Well, colors was interesting because you can imagine you've got residents in the co-op trying to pick colors. Like most people will say, don't let your members pick the colors, let the architect. But that was one thing. But the most interesting thing was the conversion to electricity and to the air source heat pumps. And first of all, people have this myth that electricity is going to cost you more than gas. Yes, it is if you got a leaky house, but if you've got an energy efficient house, that isn't true. So, I mean, you're dealing with those kind of myths. And then it's a totally different technology. Like these air source heat pumps were outside, like the condensers are outside on the buildings, and people were concerned about noise. And we actually had to create a show and tell where people went to an existing building to hear the noise. So that was the most contentious thing. It was quite interesting. I don't know, Beth or Jean, do you want to make a comment?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind for me, Lynn, is that we discovered that some members had a deep attachment to their gas stoves. Deep. And there was some contentiousness that arose as we navigated that shift with a few lovers of their gas stoves. But we're on the other side. We're on the other side of that now. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jean. Beth, is there anything else you wanted to add before we go to the next question?
No, I think that about covers it. That certainly the conversion to the heat pumps was a biggie. And we actually staged a demonstration that we with a person in another community who had their house retrofitted and had an air source heat pump. And we had made arrangements with him to have members go to his house and listen to his external heat pump so that they could hear how not noisy it was. Unfortunately, very few of the members took us up on that, which was very sad because it was quite telling when you got up there and you had to literally stand within four feet or closer to even hear it hum. And he had turned it on. It was a rainy day, so he turned it on for us, and you couldn't hear it at all. So that was the biggest bone of contention for most of the members, was how noisy these were going to be. And they all thought they were all going to sound like the old fashioned air conditioners, which sound like 747s taking off. And these do not. So
Before we go to the next question, I actually have a question as a lover of my own gas stove, and I know that its days are probably numbered. Jean, what kind of stoves did people put in? Are they just, did they put in induction, or are they just electric coil?
They had, and we offered the option for induction or straight electric. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So personal preference.
We have another question from our anonymous attendee. I don't know their name, but the question is SPDC a board committee or a member committee? What if membership is not very engaged on existing committees, or the volunteer pool is small? Can many of the committee's tasks be delegated to co-op support staff? So there's a bunch in there, probably for Lynn, Jean, and Beth.
I can take some of that. The SPDC is a standing committee of the co-op. So it consists of co-op members. It also happens to have currently 2 board members on it. So that helps. And throughout all of this, we have had great board support. Any sort of issues that had to be dealt with by the board were dealt with very, very honestly and fairly and quickly, so that things didn't drag on. So yeah, no, we've been very lucky. But I take your point that if you have very small membership or they're not committed, it's probably hard to. It might be hard to have a committee set up, but it certainly could be done by support staff, I would think.
Yeah, there is no staff in the co-op. This co-op is self-managed through the board and the committees. They've contracted with Communitas to be the project managers, and they send out their books to be done in terms of accounting. So like it isn't like they don't have a co-op manager or anything like that. I think if the co-op decides to undertake this type of activity, people would be involved because it immediately affects their units. You know, your work is being done around you. There's the potential in terms of controlling your housing costs and stuff. So I think there would be an incentive to be motivated.
Well, what I might add, Beth and Lynn, is that I think a lot of groundwork needs to be prepared for members to have some time to think about what is it that we value about living in a housing cooperative, and how do we want to manage the maintenance issues that come up on our buildings. Are we just going to continue to Band-Aid and patch things up as we go, or can we look at a more comprehensive management of the physicality of the housing co-op, and then to check in with their values, and as we did, and you would recall that slide that had us Sundance membership examining what is it we value about living here, and environmental sustainability is there. It is, thank you, always on that list. So setting aside maybe a year, maybe longer, to educate and prepare people for the possibility of going in this direction, I think is an important factor, so that everybody buys in.
Thank you, Lynn, Jean, and Beth. We have a question from Georgia Rahil. I'm going to allow you to talk, Georgia, and I'm going to unmute you. Oh, you're there. Ask your question, Georgia.
Yes, obviously this whole presentation is focused on cooperative housing, but I'm interested in the applicability of the energy sprung concept to single-family dwellings. It's my understanding that the city of Edmonton is implementing a program to help homeowners make the investments, including, I believe, for deep energy retrofits, but pay for them through their taxes and have the liability stay attached to the property. So if you sold it, the new owners who would get the benefits in terms of reduced costs are also paying off the initial investment.
Yeah, that's the city's PACE program that they've just initiated. And I don't know what stage that is at right now, but they've just initiated. Peter can talk about the applicability to single family homes because Butterwick is actually involved with some of that.
So, yeah, I'm also on the City of Edmonton's Energy Transition Advisory Committee, and have been engaged with the folks who are delivering the SEEP program and urging them to use the sort of limited bandwidth that they've got to encourage deep retrofits rather than piecemeal retrofits. And so I think that they certainly have that message and are trying to figure out how to do that and to steer the SEEP resources in the direction of deeper retrofits. And we're also, as Lynn mentioned, trying out the energy sprung approach on 3 single family houses in Edmonton. We've just started construction on the first one. We hope to have all 3 of them done later this year. And so we'll have a lot better idea of how transferable this panelized approach is to single family houses. I don't think it's going to work everywhere, but I think that there's a set of houses of a certain vintage needing, that where the owners want to kind of look after years of maintenance, prevent future maintenance requirements and stuff like that, where they're going to make sense. But we're, one of the reasons we started Retrofit Canada is to be able to distribute information on this kind of stuff. And we're just in the process of doing that.
Okay, we have, oh, Lynn, did you want to add something? I thought I heard somebody. Okay, we have no more questions in the Q&A or in the comments. Just so everybody knows, I did drop in the links to all the organizations represented here today. So sundancecoop.org, communitas.ca, butterwick.ca, and retrofitcanada.com. And I think we're at the end of our presentation. Just before I thank our presenters, I do want to recognize that my boss joined this webinar partway through. His name is Daniel Keelback. He is the president of Retrofit Canada's board, and he is managing our relationship with Butterwick, with Sundance, and helping us just make sure that we're delivering what our funding agreements require. So thank you for coming, Dan. Really appreciate it. And finally, just thank you to Lynn Hanley from Communitas, Peter Amarangan from Butterwick and Retrofit Canada, Beth Nielsen and Jean Ure from the Sundance Planning and Development Committee. Thank you all for your presentation. Thank you to everybody that asked questions and attended. We really appreciate it. We will be sending out a short survey about this webinar. We look forward to your honest feedback. As Lynn said, we will be doing more and we want to do a better job every time. So it'll be a short survey. You can probably expect it in your inboxes by Monday at the latest. And other than that, everybody have a great day. I hope it is as beautiful wherever you are as it is in Edmonton today. Finally, any final words from anybody that's able to speak right now?
I just wanted to say that there was a question as to whether the recording will be available, and yes, it will be available. And Tim will send that information out.
As well as the slide deck. That was another question. So thank you, Lynn. Okay, everybody, have a great day.